I made $1 million and lost every single penny of it, all because I violated one biblical principle that Solomon warned about 3,000 years ago. And here is what I wish I knew 40 years back. It was March of 1992. I was sitting in my car outside a grocery store, staring at my bank statement. $47.33. That was everything I had left. My hands were shaking because I knew rent was due in 5 days, and I had 3 kids at home. My wife Sarah had no idea how bad things had gotten. I was too ashamed, too proud to tell her the truth. I had been working 12-hour days, 6 days a week, doing everything I thought I was supposed to do, but the money just kept disappearing like water through my fingers. That night, I got down on my knees in our bedroom after Sarah fell asleep, and I prayed the most desperate prayer of my life. And in that moment of brokenness, God showed me something that changed everything. I was not poor because I lacked money. I was poor because I lacked spiritual wisdom about money. Over the next 30 years, I discovered 10 biblical lessons that completely transformed not just my bank account, but my entire relationship with wealth, provision, and purpose. And today, I am going to share every single one of them with you, exactly the way I wish someone had shared them with me when I was sitting in that car with $47 to my name. If you apply these 10 lessons, and I mean really apply them, not just nod your head and forget about them tomorrow, you will not just make more money. You will experience a level of financial peace, freedom, and kingdom purpose that no stock market boom, no pay raise, no lottery win could ever provide. These are not trendy financial hacks that will be outdated next year. These are ancient, timeless principles that have created wealth for thousands of years and will continue to work regardless of what happens in the economy, the government, or the world around you. Lesson 1. God's blueprint before wealth. Let me start with the lesson that most Christians completely miss, and it cost me everything. Most people have this backwards. They hustle to make money first, then maybe, if they have time, they ask God what He thinks about it. But here is what nobody tells you. In the Bible, doing it that way guarantees failure from the very first step. Imagine trying to build a house without a blueprint. You would not start pouring concrete and hammering nails randomly, hoping it turns into something beautiful, right? You would end up with a disaster, a pile of expensive mistakes. The same principle applies to your finances and your business. If you do not have God's blueprint first, you are just building a very expensive disaster. Proverbs chapter 3 verses 9 and 10 say, "Honor the Lord with your wealth and with the first fruits of all your produce, then your barns will be filled with plenty and your vats will be bursting with wine." Did you catch the order? Honor first, overflow second. This is not a suggestion. This is divine design. This is how the universe works. Look at Nehemiah in the Old Testament. Before he rebuilt the walls of Jerusalem, he did not rush in with his own plan and his own funding strategy. He prayed for 4 months. 4 months. He sought God's wisdom, he waited for the blueprint, and only after he had clarity from God did the resources start showing up. And when they showed up big. The king gave him letters of safe passage, timber for all the gates, and a military escort to protect him. All of this came because Nehemiah had the blueprint from God first. Now flip over to Matthew chapter 25, the parable of the talents. The servants who multiplied their master's money did not just get lucky, they operated according to their master's will and purpose. They understood the assignment. The result was exponential multiplication. 5 talents became 10, 2 talents became 4. But the servant who buried his talent out of fear and acted without understanding the master's plan, he lost everything and got thrown into outer darkness. That is not just a story about laziness, that is a story about operating without divine blueprint. Here is how you apply this today, right now. Before you make another major financial decision, stop. Take out a piece of paper and write down your purpose statement for your finances and your business. Ask yourself these questions. Why am I pursuing this income? What kingdom purpose will this money serve? How does this align with what God has specifically called me to do? Not what He called your pastor to do, not what He called your favorite influencer to do, but what He called you to do. When every financial decision goes through this filter, everything changes. Opportunities that looked shiny suddenly reveal themselves as distractions. And doors you never noticed before swing wide open because they align with your God-given purpose. The contrast is crystal clear. God's way is purpose first, then profit follows naturally. The world's way is profit first, then scramble to find some meaning for it later. One leads to lasting fulfillment, exponential multiplication, and a legacy that outlives you. The other leads to emptiness, anxiety, and regret, even when your bank account has 7 figures in it. I have met millionaires who are miserable because they built wealth without blueprint. And I have met people with modest incomes who are bursting with joy because every dollar they earn is aligned with divine purpose. Lesson 2. Stewardship that attracts promotion. Here is a truth that might sting a little, but you need to hear it. You pray and beg God to bless you financially. You ask Him for breakthroughs, for promotions, for opportunities. But if you cannot manage $100 with wisdom and discipline, why would God trust you with $100,000? It is not that God does not want to bless you, He does. But He is waiting for you to prove you can be faithful with little before He promotes you to much. Think about it like this. If you hired someone to manage your business, and they were careless with small amounts of money, would you give them access to your life savings? Of course not. God operates the same way, except He is infinitely wiser than you are. Psalm 24 verse 1 says, "The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and those who dwell therein." Everything you have, your car, your house, your bank account, your income, even the air in your lungs, it all belongs to God. You are not the owner. You are the manager. You are the steward. And stewardship is the test that determines your promotion. In John chapter 6, after Jesus fed the 5,000 people with just 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, He did not just walk away and let the leftovers rot on the ground. He told His disciples to gather the fragments so that nothing would be lost. 12 baskets of leftovers. Think about that for a moment. Jesus just performed one of the greatest miracles in human history, supernaturally multiplying food out of thin air, and His next instruction was about careful stewardship. If Jesus, who could speak universes into existence, cared about 12 baskets of leftover bread, how much more should we care about what He has entrusted to us? Here is how you practice real stewardship starting today. First, track your finances every single day. I know that sounds boring. I know it sounds tedious, but you cannot manage what you do not measure. Most people have no idea where their money goes. They just know that it disappears. Money comes in on payday, and 2 weeks later they are broke again, wondering what happened. Download a budgeting app or use a simple spreadsheet. Track every dollar for 90 days, and I promise you will be shocked, maybe even horrified, at what you discover. Second, build an emergency fund. Start with $1,000 if that is all you can do, then work your way up to 3 to 6 months of living expenses. This fund is not for vacations or new furniture. It is for true emergencies. Car repairs, medical bills, unexpected job loss. This fund protects you from having to go into debt when life punches you in the face, and life will punch you in the face at some point. Third, automate your savings. Human willpower is weak. We all know this. So do not rely on willpower. Set up automatic transfers so that a portion of every paycheck goes straight into savings before you even see it. Pay yourself first, as they say. But really you are paying God first because it is all His money anyway. Fourth, eliminate invisible waste. I call these untracked losses. Subscriptions you forgot you signed up for. Food that rots in your fridge because you ate out instead, impulse purchases you regret the next morning, premium services you never use. Add them all up, and you might be wasting $300, $500, even $1,000 every month. That is $6,000 to $12,000 per year just evaporating into thin air. Plug those leaks and redirect that money toward your financial goals. Let me tell you about Rebecca. She was drowning in $15,000 of credit card debt. She felt hopeless, embarrassed, trapped. Every month she would make the minimum payment and watch the balance barely move. But she made a commitment to track every single expense for 90 days. No judgment, no shame, just pure awareness. By day 30, she had already identified over $300 per month in waste. Subscriptions she did not need, daily coffee shop visits that added up to $150 per month, impulse Amazon purchases. She cut all of it and redirected that money toward her debt using the debt snowball method. 18 months later, the entire $15,000 was gone. Paid off. Freedom. And here is the beautiful part. Once she was debt-free, God opened a door for a promotion at work that came with a $12,000 raise. Stewardship attracted promotion. God saw her faithfulness with little, and he trusted her with more. Lesson 3. Multiply without fear. God never praises people who play it safe. In fact, in the parable of the talents, the only servant who got condemned, the only one who got called wicked and slothful and thrown into outer darkness, was the one who buried his money in the ground out of fear. His excuse? He said, "Master, I knew you were a hard man, so I was afraid, and I hid your talent in the ground." And Jesus did not say, "Oh, that is okay, I understand. Fear is natural." No. Jesus rebuked him harshly. Why? Because fear-based inaction is actually disobedience dressed up as caution. Here is what I have learned over 40 years. Fear has buried more potential than failure ever has. Think about that. How many businesses were never started because someone was afraid of failing? How many investments were never made because someone was afraid of losing money? How many skills were never developed because someone was afraid of looking foolish while learning? Fear is one of the greatest thieves of destiny. It whispers in your ear, "What if you fail? What if you lose everything? What if people laugh at you?" And if you listen to that voice, you will bury your talents in the ground and miss everything God had planned for you. Matthew chapter 25 makes it abundantly clear. The servants who multiplied their master's resources were not reckless gamblers throwing money at stupid ideas. They were wise risk-takers who stepped out in faith. They invested, they worked, they built, they took calculated risks, and they were rewarded exponentially. One servant turned 5 talents into 10. Another turned 2 talents into 4. Both received the same commendation. Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. So how do you multiply without being foolish? How do you take risks without being reckless? First, start a small business or side hustle. You do not need to quit your job tomorrow and bet everything on some wild idea. Start small. Test the market. Provide value to people and charge fairly for it. Even an extra $500 per month can completely change your financial trajectory. That is $6,000 per year, $60,000 over 10 years, not counting any growth or investment returns. Second, invest in yourself. Take courses, read books, attend conferences, find mentors who are already where you want to be. Your ability to earn is directly tied to the value you can provide, and value comes from developing skills that are rare and useful. I know a guy named Marcus who was working a dead-end factory job making $35,000 per year. He spent 2 years learning digital marketing skills in the evenings after work. 2 years of sacrifice, 2 years of being tired, 2 years of saying no to hanging out with friends. But at the end of those 2 years, he landed a marketing job that paid $70,000. He doubled his income because he invested in himself. Third, invest in assets that generate cash flow while you sleep. real estate that you rent out, dividend-paying stocks that send you checks every quarter, a business that runs with systems so it does not require your constant presence. These are the investments that create true wealth over time. The key is to move from fear to faith-filled action. Pray about the opportunity. Seek wise counsel from mature believers who have financial success. Do your research, and then step out. God blesses obedient movement, not paralyzed inaction. Lesson 4. Righteous business wins long-term. You can grow fast with dishonesty, but you will collapse even faster. I have watched it happen over and over again in my 40 years of business. A company cuts corners, lies to customers, exploits employees, uses manipulative marketing tactics, and for a season, sometimes even a few years, it looks like they are winning. Revenue is up, profits are soaring, the founder is on magazine covers talking about their success. But then the house of cards collapses. Lawsuits, scandals, bankruptcy, public disgrace. It happens every single time. You cannot build lasting wealth on a foundation of dishonesty. Proverbs chapter 10 verse 9 says, "Whoever walks in integrity walks securely, but he who makes his ways crooked will be found out." Integrity equals security. Dishonesty equals eventual destruction. It is a law as reliable as gravity. You can deny gravity all you want, but if you jump off a building, gravity will still work. The same applies to integrity. Proverbs chapter 11 verse 1 adds that a false balance is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. In ancient times, merchants would use rigged scales to cheat customers. They would have one set of weights for buying and a different set for selling, so they always came out ahead. And God called this behavior an abomination. Not just wrong, not just unwise, but abominable, disgusting, detestable. Today it looks different, but the principle is the same. Deceptive marketing that overpromises and underdelivers. Inflated pricing where you charge way more than the value you provide. Hidden fees that you do not disclose until after the sale. Exploitation of workers where you pay as little as possible and squeeze every ounce of productivity out of them. All of these are modern versions of false balances, and God still calls them abominations. Here is the truth that the business world does not want you to know. Righteousness is actually your competitive advantage. In a world full of liars and cheaters and manipulators, being honest makes you stand out like a lighthouse in a storm. Here is how you build a righteous business. First, audit your business ethics right now. Go through every aspect of your business or job and ask yourself, is this honest? Would I be okay with this if my customers knew every detail? If my pricing structure was displayed on a billboard for everyone to see, would I be proud or ashamed? If the answer is ashamed, change it immediately. Second, pay fair wages. Do not exploit people just because you can get away with it. Treat your employees or contractors the way you would want to be treated if the roles were reversed. Third, practice radically honest marketing. Do not hype up your product or service beyond what it actually delivers. Tell the truth about what people are getting, including the limitations. Disclose everything up front. Let integrity be your marketing strategy. I know a guy named Daniel who owns a construction company. His competitors were underbidding him on every job by using cheap materials, cutting safety corners, and paying workers under the table to avoid taxes. For 2 years, Daniel watched his business struggle while the dishonest guys seemed to win every contract. But he refused to compromise. He kept using quality materials, following all safety regulations, and paying fair wages with proper documentation. It was painful. There were months he barely broke even, but he trusted God and stuck to righteous business practices. Then something interesting happened. 3 of his competitors got shut down by lawsuits and regulatory violations. Clients who had been burned by cheap work started seeking out Daniel specifically because of his reputation for honesty. Within 18 months, his business grew by 300%. Righteousness won in the long run, just like the Bible promises. Lesson 5. Giving unlocks multiplication. Here is a truth that sounds completely backwards to the natural mind, but I have tested it for 3 decades, and it works every single time. You do not become wealthy after you start giving. You become wealthy because you give. Generosity is not the result of abundance. Generosity creates abundance. I know that sounds crazy. The world says accumulate first, give later. Get yours, then maybe help others if you feel like it. But God's kingdom operates on the opposite principle. Proverbs chapter 11 verse 25 says, "Whoever brings blessing will be enriched, and one who waters will himself be watered." Notice the order here. Blessing others comes first, being enriched follows. This is a spiritual law that governs the universe, and it is as reliable as the law of gravity. Malachi chapter 3 verse 10 is the only place in the entire Bible where God invites you to test him. He says, "Bring the full tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house, and thereby put me to the test," says the Lord of hosts. "If I will not open the windows of heaven for you and pour down for you a blessing until there is no more need." God is so confident in the principle of generosity that he says, "Go ahead, test me on this one, see if I am telling the truth." Now let me be crystal clear about something. Giving is not a magic formula to manipulate God into making you rich. That twisted prosperity gospel nonsense dishonors God and destroys people's faith when the promises do not come true the way they expected. True giving flows from a heart of worship and gratitude, not greed. You give because you love God and you want to advance his kingdom, not because you are trying to trick him into giving you a nicer car. But here is the mysterious part. When you give with the right heart, when your motive is pure worship and obedience, God does respond with blessing. Not always in the way you expect, not always on your timeline, but always in the way that is best for you and brings the most glory to him. Here is how to practice biblical generosity starting today. First, tithe 10% of your gross income to your local church. Not net after taxes, gross before anything gets taken out. This is the foundation of biblical giving. It is not a suggestion or a nice idea. It is a command that comes with a promise. Second, create a generosity fund separate from your tithe. Set aside money specifically for spontaneous giving. When the Holy Spirit prompts you to bless someone, to help a single mom pay her rent, to fund a mission trip for a college student, you have the resources ready to obey immediately. Third, support missions and kingdom work beyond your local church. Look at what God is doing around the world and invest in it. Fourth, make it systematic. Do not just give when you feel emotional or when someone tugs at your heartstrings. Create a monthly giving plan and stick to it whether you feel like it or not. Let me tell you about Jennifer. She was a marketing consultant making about $80,000 per year. Decent income, but nothing spectacular. She was comfortable, but not wealthy. One day she made a radical decision. She committed to giving away 10% of her gross profit, not revenue but actual profit, to kingdom work every single quarter. She supported missionaries in Southeast Asia, funded water wells in Africa, helped plant churches in unreached areas. It scared her at first. What if business slowed down? What if she could not afford it? But she trusted God and did it anyway. Within 18 months, her business revenue increased by 400%. 400%. She went from $80,000 per year to over $300,000 per year. And here is the beautiful part. As her income grew, so did her giving. She is now funding multiple missionaries, supporting church plants in 3 countries, and helping orphanages around the world. She would tell you without hesitation that generosity unlocked the multiplication. When she honored God with her finances, he opened doors that no human could open. Lesson 6. Debt that destroys destiny. Your debt is not just taking your money every month. It is taking something far more valuable. It is taking the freedom that God designed for your life. Proverbs 22 verse 7 says, "The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is the slave of the lender." Read that again slowly. Slave. Not inconvenienced, not slightly restricted. Slave. When you owe money, you are not free. You might feel free, you might think you are free, but you are in bondage. When you are in debt, you cannot obey God fully. If He calls you to the mission field, you cannot go because you have student loan payments. If He calls you to start a ministry, you cannot do it because you are chained to your corporate job to pay off your car and your credit cards and your mortgage that is way too big for your income. If He prompts you to give generously to someone in need, you cannot because all your money is already spent before you even earn it. Debt does not just limit your finances, it limits your destiny, your calling, your ability to say yes to God. Now let me clarify something important. Not all debt is created equal. There is bad debt and there is strategic leverage. Bad debt is borrowing money to buy things that go down in value or that you consume. Credit cards for vacations you cannot afford, car loans for vehicles that depreciate the moment you drive them off the lot, personal loans for furniture and electronics, financing your lifestyle because you want to look successful. This kind of debt is a python that slowly squeezes the life out of your finances. Strategic leverage is borrowing money to acquire assets that go up in value and produce income. A mortgage on a rental property that generates positive cash flow every month, a business loan that allows you to scale and increase your profit margins significantly, a line of credit that lets you take advantage of a time-sensitive opportunity that will clearly generate a strong return. This can be wise if managed carefully. If you have done your homework, if you have sought counsel, and if the numbers actually work. But even strategic leverage must be handled with wisdom, caution, and humility. Here is how to get out of bad debt and stay out forever. First, choose the debt avalanche or debt snowball method. Avalanche means listing all your debts and paying off the one with the highest interest rate first, while making minimum payments on everything else. This saves you the most money in interest over time. Snowball means listing all your debts from smallest to largest and paying off the smallest one first while making minimum payments on the others. This builds psychological momentum because you get quick wins. Choose whichever method fits your personality better and then attack your debt with intense focus. Second, cut lifestyle inflation immediately and ruthlessly. Stop trying to impress people who do not even care about you with money you do not even have. Drive a car that is 5 years older than what you think you deserve. Live in a house or apartment that is smaller than what your friends have. Stop eating out 5 times a week. Cancel subscriptions you do not absolutely need. Every single dollar you free up accelerates your path to freedom. I know it is not fun. I know it requires sacrifice, but slavery is not fun either, and that is what debt is. Third, build a 6-month emergency fund as fast as you possibly can. This is your freedom fund. It prevents you from going back into debt when life happens, because life will happen. Your car will break down. Your roof will leak. You will need emergency dental work. If you do not have savings to cover these things, you will be forced back into debt, and the cycle continues forever. Break the cycle by building a buffer. Lesson 7. Wisdom over impulse. The Bible literally forbids FOMO, fear of missing out. Proverbs 21 verse 5 says, "The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty." Did you catch that? Haste leads to poverty. Rushed decisions lead to financial loss. Impulse leads to regret. Slow down, think, pray, seek counsel, wait for clarity. The opportunity might look amazing right now, but if it is truly from God, it will still be there after you have taken time to evaluate it properly. Ecclesiastes chapter 3 teaches us that there is a season for everything under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die. a time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted. There is a time to buy and a time to sell, a time to invest and a time to hold cash. If you act impulsively without discerning what season you are in, you will lose money. I have watched this happen hundreds of times. People jump into investments because everyone else is doing it and they do not want to miss out. The stock market is at all-time highs, so they pour their life savings in right at the peak, then panic sell at the bottom when it crashes. Real estate is hot, so they overpay for property right before a correction and then lose their shirt. Cryptocurrency is surging, so they buy high because of FOMO and sell low because of fear. Every single one of these disasters was driven by emotion and impulse, not wisdom and discernment. Here is how to invest with wisdom instead of impulse. First, create a 12-month investment plan. Sit down and write out your financial goals, your risk tolerance, your investment strategy, your target allocations. Make decisions when you are calm and clear-headed, not when you are emotional and impulsive. Then stick to the plan. Do not deviate just because something shiny comes along or because your brother-in-law has a hot tip. Second, seek counsel from multiple mature believers who have demonstrated financial wisdom over decades. Proverbs says, "In the multitude of counselors there is safety." Do not make major financial decisions in isolation. Do not trust your own judgment exclusively. Get input from people who are wiser and more experienced than you are. And if the counsel is divided, if half of them say yes and half say no, that is usually a sign to wait. Third, eliminate emotional investing completely. If you feel a sense of urgency, if you feel pressure to act immediately, if you feel FOMO, that is a red flag, not a green light. Wise investments can withstand thoughtful evaluation. They can wait for due diligence. They do not require you to decide in the next 24 hours or miss out forever. Scams and bad deals require urgency. Good opportunities allow for wisdom. Lesson 8. Diversify like Solomon. If you have one source of income, you do not have security. You have risk. You have vulnerability. All it takes is one layoff, one business failure, one market shift, one economic recession, and your entire financial life collapses. But if you have multiple streams of income flowing from different sources, you have resilience. You have stability. You have options. Ecclesiastes chapter 11 verse 2 says, "Give a portion to 7, or even to 8, for you know not what disaster may happen on earth." Solomon, the wisest and wealthiest man who ever lived, understood diversification 3,000 years ago. He did not have all his wealth in one place. He had gold mines in Ophir, international trade routes bringing in exotic goods, political alliances that generated tribute, vast herds of livestock, agricultural land producing crops. When one income stream slowed down or dried up completely, the other streams kept flowing and sustained him. Here is how to diversify your income today with practical steps. First, invest in real estate. Buy a rental property and collect monthly cash flow. Invest in REITs, real estate investment trusts, if you do not have the capital or desire to manage physical property. Consider house hacking, where you live in one unit of a duplex or triplex and rent out the others to cover your mortgage. Second, buy dividend-paying stocks. These are shares in stable companies that send you checks every quarter just for owning them. The dividends compound over time and create a growing stream of passive income. Third, start a side business using your existing skills. Are you good at graphic design? Start freelancing. Are you skilled at woodworking? Sell custom furniture. Do you have expertise in a particular field? Offer consulting. Even an extra $1,000 per month from a side business creates breathing room and accelerates all your other financial goals. Fourth, create digital products that can sell while you sleep. Write an ebook and sell it on Amazon. Create an online course teaching something you know well. Design templates or tools that solve problems for a specific audience. The beautiful thing about digital products is that you create them once and they can generate income for years with minimal ongoing effort. Fifth, invest globally in kingdom work that also produces returns. Some mission organizations and Christian businesses offer investment opportunities where your money funds ministry while also generating modest returns. This allows you to do well financially while doing good in the world. Diversification is not just about money. It is about wisdom. It is about building a financial foundation that can weather any storm, any economic crisis, any unexpected disaster. When one stream dries up, you have others to sustain you. Lesson 9. Diligence. Plus rest equals supernatural results. Working yourself into exhaustion is not a sign of faith. It is actually a sign of unbelief. True faith includes rest because rest declares that you trust God to provide, even when you are not grinding 24/7. Proverbs chapter 12, verse 24 says, "The hand of the diligent will rule, while the slothful will be put to forced labor." Diligence is absolutely essential. You cannot be lazy and expect God to rain money from heaven. That is not how it works. But diligence without rest leads to burnout, and burnout leads to collapse. God himself modeled this rhythm. He created the entire universe in 6 days and rested on the seventh. Not because he was tired, God does not get tired, but because he was establishing a pattern for us to follow. The Sabbath is a gift, not a burden. It is a weekly reminder that you are not God. You do not have to carry everything. You are not responsible for holding the universe together. You can rest and trust him to sustain you. James chapter 5 verse 7 talks about the farmer who waits for the precious fruit of the earth, being patient about it until it receives the early and the late rains. The farmer works incredibly hard during planting season. He plows, he plants, he waters, he fertilizes. But then he waits, he rests, he trusts the process. He does not dig up the seeds every day to check if they are growing. He lets nature, which is really God, do its work. And in due season, the harvest comes. Here is how to balance diligence and rest practically. First, establish a weekly rest block. One full day where you do not check work emails. Do not think about business. Do not hustle. Use that day to worship God. Spend quality time with your family. Recharge your soul. Do things that bring you joy. Protect this day fiercely because the world will try to steal it from you. Second, take quarterly prayer retreats. Every 3 months, get away from your normal environment for a day or two and seek God about the next season. Ask him what he wants you to focus on, what he wants you to stop doing, where he is leading you. This prevents you from drifting off course and wasting time on things that do not matter. Third, develop a sustainable work rhythm that you can maintain for decades, not just months. Sprint seasons are fine where you work intensely for a short period to hit a specific goal, but sprinting cannot be your normal pace. You will destroy your health, your relationships, and eventually your productivity. Work intensely for a season, then scale back and recover. Repeat. This rhythm prevents burnout and allows for long-term fruitfulness instead of short-term hustle that leads to collapse. Lesson 10. Build legacy, not just income. If your wealth dies with you, then you were never truly wealthy. You were just temporarily comfortable. Proverbs chapter 13 verse 22 says, "A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, but the sinner's wealth is laid up for the righteous." Notice it does not say children. It says children's children, grandchildren. That is multi-generational thinking. That is legacy. Most people are building income. They make money, they spend money, they save a little if they are disciplined, and when they die, maybe their kids get something. Maybe. But kingdom-minded people build legacy. They create systems and structures that transfer wealth, wisdom, and faith to the next generation and beyond. They set up assets and foundations that continue doing kingdom work decades after they take their last breath. Here is what legacy building looks like practically. First, create a comprehensive estate plan. Write a will that clearly specifies how your assets will be distributed. Set up trusts if necessary to protect your wealth and minimize taxes. Name guardians for your minor children. Make sure your wealth is distributed according to kingdom values, not just default legal processes that might send everything to relatives who will waste it. Second, teach your children financial wisdom from an early age. Do not just leave them money. Leave them the character and skills to manage money well. Give them age-appropriate financial responsibilities. Teach them to budget by managing a small allowance. Show them how to give, save, and invest. Take them with you when you donate to charities so they see generosity modeled. If you leave $1 million to children who lack financial discipline, you are not blessing them, you are cursing them. They will destroy themselves and squander everything you built. Third, establish kingdom philanthropy that outlives you. Set up a foundation or donor-advised fund or charitable trust that continues funding ministry and mission work long after you are gone. Your money can be preaching the gospel, feeding the hungry, building churches, training pastors, translating Bibles, and rescuing people from darkness for generations after you die. That is legacy. Legacy is not about being rich. It is about being faithful across generations. It is about stewarding resources in such a way that your great-great-grandchildren benefit from seeds you planted today. It is about hearing God say, "Well done, good and faithful servant," not just for what you did in your lifetime, but for what continues happening through your legacy long after you are home with Him. Remember that night in 1992 when I was on my knees with $47 to my name. That was the night everything changed, not because I figured out some clever financial strategy, but because I surrendered to God's wisdom about money. These 10 lessons have guided me for over 3 decades. They took me from broke and desperate to financially free and generous. But more importantly, they gave me peace, purpose, and the joy of seeing my resources used for eternal impact. Your financial breakthrough does not depend on the economy. It does not depend on the stock market, the government, your boss, or your circumstances. It depends on your obedience to God's word and your willingness to align your finances with His kingdom purposes. When you do that, when you truly commit to operating according to biblical financial principles, you tap into a supernatural flow of provision that defies natural circumstances. If you want God to trust you with more, I want to invite you to do something right now. Comment below and declare, "Lord, make me faithful with what I have." This is not just a comment. This is a declaration of surrender. This is you saying, "God, I am done doing money my way. I want to do it your way." Even when it does not make sense to my natural mind, even when it requires sacrifice, even when it goes against what everyone else is doing. When you make that declaration with sincerity and then back it up with obedient action, watch how God responds. Watch how doors open that you did not even know existed. Watch how provision shows up from unexpected places. Watch how peace replaces anxiety and purpose replaces confusion. The choice is yours. You can keep doing what you have always done and keep getting what you have always gotten. Or you can surrender to God's wisdom and watch Him transform your finances in ways you never imagined possible.